Okay, it is 8:30, and again, welcome to J122 Crime Scenes to Conviction, Critical Skills in Written and Oral Communication. And it is now week number 4, and the quarter is moving on. Make sure that you activate audio. Okay, and so here we are. Okay, good. I have both Bob and Vlad here. Welcome, guys. And so we're going to go ahead and we're going to get started. But I will say this, that the quarter is moving very fast. We got 7 more weeks to go, and that we are rapidly approaching the halfway point, which would be in actually week 5 is the bottom of it, and then week 6. So about the next time we have a lecture, we'll be halfway through, and then we'll have 5 more weeks left. So basically, we'll have 3 more lectures after today, week 6, week 8, and week 10. And so today, I'm going to go over some assignments that we have, remind you about a few things, and so we're going to go ahead and we're going to get started right now. Let me share my screen. Okay, here we go. First of all, I want to remind you that I keep saying that students can feel free to call me, text me, or email me any hour of the day except the 25th hour of the day. Make sure that when you do text me that you do include your name, of course, not just your phone number, but also include which class you're in. I have 88 students, and some of you guys are in more than one of my classes. So anyway, and then remind you, this is the week that I was talking about. You are required to conduct research for week 4 written assignment, hostage. We're going to talk about that again. That means that the sole source of your papers cannot be the textbook, and you will lose 2 points if you just use the textbooks themselves. The hostage assignment also must include APA citations in the body and reference at the end. This is the only real written assignment in this particular course where you have to do APA. Make sure you have cover sheets, though, for all written assignments. But this one requires the cover sheet as well as the citations in the body, and it requires also the number of pages that it says the assignment must be, and make sure you run it through Grammarly to make sure that you don't get hit with a Grammarly hit. And then also, finally, make sure you have a reference page. And then make sure, I have had students who have references listed, but they don't have citations listed. You need both. Both are required, very important, okay? So let's get right into what we have here. Here's, as I remind students every week, go over the announcement for details about what to expect during the course of that week. In week 4, special communication challenges. We'll have a chance to visit a tape that is in here that has to do with Spanish speaking, and we're going to utilize that for a little while so you can get some basic commands in Spanish. And then if you notice and read carefully, where after the reading it says communication barriers in police work and hostage negotiation, we're going to talk about that, and then the video on Spanish law enforcement commands. And then, of course, your discussion assignment this week involves, sorry, I don't speak Spanish, and you had to give me some solutions as to how you would communicate with that individual. And there's a reason why we focus on Spanish, is because the fastest growing population in the United States of America is Hispanic, and that you're going to, in urban areas, more likely run into Spanish-speaking people than not now. Even now in some of these suburban communities as well. But anyway, it's the language of all the foreign languages. And if you speak a foreign language, bilingual, that's a good thing for you. Finally, the written assignment hostage, and then you have your writing skills quiz as well. And then I encourage you to complete the mid-quarter student survey that you get. I need you to complete that so that I can get an evaluation about how the course is going, and making sure that if you have any issues that you haven't directly addressed, there are some things in the course that they will ask you about that have nothing to do with me. Or as a student once said to me, they said, we have too many written assignments. Well, that's not in this course that's saying that, but that I tell students I don't write the courses, I just teach them, and then if I see some things that I think that are problematic, like for example, if there's some links that you're having a problem with, they're broken, first thing I want you to do is contact personal support. Personal support will create a ticket, and then they will fix that, not just for you, but for everybody in the class. And as I run across them, I do the same thing. Then finally, our motto, adversity is a springboard to success. You know what that is all about there as well. I shared that with you during the open house. So now let's take a look at our calendar real quick so we can see what's going on here. There's another source in addition to your announcements that you should check if you have questions about what is due, when is it due. So here's once again, your reading assignment given. If you click on that, it opens it up and it tells you what it is that is expected for reading for that particular week. And then your initial post, of course, tells you about your live lectures. And then it also tells you about your reply posts, okay? Your written assignment this week involves hostage. And again, I'll open this up. Be sure to include the required citations and references. I've said that before, and I included in there, as well as your written skills quiz. Make sure that you take that as well. And I express the reason why we have writing skills quizzes early on, and we'll continue to remind you how important grammar is in your written reports and also in your communication as well. And then we go into the following week. Next week there will be no lecture, so our next lecture will be in February the 9th. So, all right, so now let's get to our actual module. Here we go. And special communication challenges. So let's, again, just go over the assignments, clarification. I already kind of talked about this, and you know what you have to do here. And then this one is a 1 to 2 page report on communication techniques you use in a hostage situation, where the hostage taker is mentally disturbed or a criminal, one or the other, mentally disturbed or a criminal. And when it's mentally disturbed situation, you have to remember that we're dealing with mentally disturbed people. These people might do things that seem erratic, but you have to be very careful to make sure that when you're dealing with them, that you are able to neutralize the situation that they've been placed in. Hostage taking can be where they are holding somebody, but their mental issues create problems, and some of their actions that they take. For example, you might tell a mentally disturbed person, you know, put your hands up, and that person won't do it. They might try to reach for what you might think is a weapon, but in reality they're not, and you quick with the trigger and you shoot and kill them, and then you find out they didn't have a weapon. And then now more and more departments are giving training to law enforcement officers about dealing with individuals who are mentally disturbed. And so it's very important. On the other hand, when you're dealing with a person who's a criminal, now this is a situation where a person might be held up in a house, they might be holding up even their own family, attempted suicide themselves, or either holding domestic instances where people are held hostage, not just the spouse or the significant other, but also the children as well. So you have to be able to deal with that, and we're going to talk about that in just a few minutes. So you're going to write a paper about that. You're going to have to learn to use escalation to bring them down. I'm sorry, de-escalation, and not use escalation. Escalation brings you up, de-escalation brings you down, or other critical incident techniques. Focus on one or two, conduct research on the internet to provide illustrations for your report. Now, illustrations can be pictures, they can be written, however you want to do it. It doesn't matter, as long as you make it clear what you're talking about. So, and then of course your quiz, you know, it's not timed, but you have only one chance to submit your answers. So you need to make sure that you do that. And again, you're familiar with that they involve grammar. Sorry about that. Let me go back now. And let's look at the lesson content itself. Now, we are rapidly approaching the time where you're going to be doing your field reports, but that's not until next week. There won't be a lecture next week, but you will discover that you have your field reports. That's going to be the first phase, and I'm jumping ahead by talking about it now, first phase of your actual final report and your draft. So you're going to have some smaller assignments along the way, but those are your major ones. Your field reports, and then transferring those field reports to a draft of a actual police report using a template that we will be discussing in week 6. We will discuss in week 6. That'll be coming up. But for week 5 next week, and at the end, I'll kind of talk about that. So these are your assignments again. Okay, so now let's deal with communication barriers in police work. Obviously, you should be aware of the fact that as a first responder, as a person who is called to the scene, usually by 911 calls, and 911 is a call for help in that situation, that you're going to usually run across people who are in distress. And you are going to have to learn to deal with that. And so you're going to have to deal with this in other scenarios as well, whether if you're in corrections. I teach a course in corrections as well, Introduction to Corrections. Some of you might be in that class, sections 1 and 2. So let's for a minute look at these special challenges that we have here. It says, please have a seat. You are a correction officer. Put yourself in your position, in the position of a correction officer at your local jail to do an intake. That is, you know, they have a new inmate who's needing to be processed. And you go to the area and introduce yourself to the inmate and ask the inmate to have a seat so you can complete some forms. Now, the inmate doesn't do what you tell them to do, which is a simple command, take a seat. So you ask again, it says. Is the inmate being obstinate, or is there a communication barrier? So you have to make a judgment call. But here's the deal, and you have to consider, and usually the first thought sometimes for ill-prepared law enforcement officers or correction officers or whoever's in this situation is, I should be followed, my command should be obeyed and followed. But is it that that person doesn't understand because they said, was there a communication barrier? And it cautions you that before you make a judgment, you need to evaluate the entire situation to make sure that there are no other legitimate communication barriers. And so those are very, very, very important. And so we're going to spend a few minutes applying in that scenario to the questions of some possible barriers. Now, the person could be a deaf mute, and you could be talking to them, and they can't hear you. They're not being obstinate. They're not being uncooperative. They just are a mute. They cannot hear. Or they may speak another language. Now, there are times when people, for example, will presume that that person understands even some basic commands like sit down, please, sit down. And if they're not speaking the same language as you, they may not be complying with you because they don't understand the command or the language. You know, now what you could do in a situation is first learn who it is that you're dealing with here. If the person is mentally disabled, same thing, back to what we talked about a few minutes ago. You as the professional have to evaluate that. Or are they under the influence? Maybe they're under the influence of some drug or alcohol. Anyway, the bottom line is that their decision-making facilities are not operating properly for whatever the reason, and then there's no communication. So you have to be the one that's calm and professional and sensitive to how to talk to this person. And you can't be forceful. Like, for example, you don't walk over and force that person into the seat. That might not be the best thing to do, the best cause of action, because then you can escalate a situation that didn't exist before or create a situation. Now, let's assume that that person does not speak a common language. So then you'll have to try to determine what language they speak. And so if a person doesn't speak the same language as you and you want them to understand, give me some ways that you might be able to communicate and give that person the command that you want them to follow, like take a seat or something like that. What's some of the ways that you can do that? You guys can type them in, and I will see them in the chat. So any ideas, Bob, Vlad? Use gestures. Okay, that's always good. You could demonstrate what you want. Okay, when you say that, kind of elaborate a little bit more for me, Bob, in terms of that. I think I know where you're going, but give me a little bit more, give me a more concrete idea of what you're talking about. You say demonstrate. Okay, all right. And you know what you can do also is further, you can beckon for the person to come over and then point down, like you said, to the seat. Or you could take a seat for a second and get up and then the person. So that'll be one way of communicating with that individual. If a person is a deaf mute, what's one other way that you could communicate with them? Then, there we go. Perfect. Right. write a little note and tell them, could you please sit down? And the person can read. They can't hear, and it's amazing to me that I've seen people who try to communicate with hearing impaired people or deaf mutes, and they will try to speak louder. And I said, they can't hear you. No matter how loud you speak, you don't know. Okay, if you know signing, then you can do signing. That is sign language and things like that, And anyway, the bottom line is that the things that you've suggested, these are things that can help you. Now, seek out a fellow officer or coworker who can interpret. Now, in your discussion post this week, I had a few people that said that they came upon the person that didn't speak Spanish, that they would consider using some of the people in the area. And I suggested that's not a good idea. And the reason why I said it wasn't a good idea is because you don't know the relationship of the people that you are asking to help you, and they could sabotage what you're trying to do in terms of questioning those individuals or trying to seek to get information and lead you off on a tangent. So you need some credible sources, and one of the most credible sources is a fellow officer or coworker who can interpret. Very, 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 very important. I again encourage people, particularly in Spanish, like what we're going to do tonight, is learn some key words. Even if you speak them out of context, the person understands that what you're trying to get them to do. If you are in the field, most officers rely on family members. I already told you that I don't like that, and I told you why. Oh, really not family members, neighbors, the same thing, and so on, to assist with interpretation. So I have some problems with that, and if you really stop and think about it, you can see the point. I'll give you an example. Since I speak Spanish, I was at a person's house doing some business, on a little side business that I run, and it was the two brothers. They were talking to each other, and they were just going at it, and I was just sitting there looking at them. And so finally, after they finished, I said to them, shook my head left to right, saying no, and then and then I took my finger and shook it at them, and I responded in Spanish to them with just a little bit of English, and so anyway, I said problemento. Oh, the problem. And so, I let them know by the time they understood that I understood that they were cussing each other out and they were using foul language. And I knew some of the words they were saying, but not every word. Well, they were like shocked and amazed at that. So what I'm trying to tell you is that if you have someone who is like a family member or somebody close to a neighbor or something, they're going to be. You're the enemy, first of all. You're the police, or you're the outsider. You may even be there to help, but the bottom line is that you're going to be perceived as like right now. Police are considered, unfortunately, in the community as the bad people, and that people will not want to talk to you. They don't want to cooperate in helping you, not because just the repercussions, but by association. And that's only because the fact that there's a lack of trust of law enforcement officers, that we're changing the paradigm now with the way we teach at this school, ethical, professional, and then more educational officers being released out into the world and the community, using the skills that we talk about as transferable skills out in the real world so that we can prepare you to meet the demands of what your job really calls for. And then we could change the paradigm and the view of people as far as law enforcement officers are concerned. So anyway, if the officer is deaf, try other means of communication, written communication, we already talked about that, or try to find someone who does signing. I learned a little bit of signing. There was a book called The Joy of Signing that I did. I taught special ed, and I had to deal with hearing impaired people and people who were deaf. And so I had to teach them. These were kids. And I had to learn some basic words that would help. Now, one of the universal things that you can do in terms of communication with a person is show a pleasant disposition. I can tell you this, that no matter what language it is that that person is, whether you're deaf, mute, or speaking a foreign language, your expressions can kind of like, a surprise expression or a frown or a scowl or either, a nod of the head, or the finger at it, those kind of things. You just have to, you use whatever means. And the key thing in communication is to send out a command and have it be received by the party that you're directing it to. And the way that oftentimes that they receive it is by how they respond. So anyway, so now let's go with some other alternatives. If the inmate is mentally ill or under the influence, the last thing you want to do is agitate them. I talked about that. So you need to be calm and direct. I've said this many times in this class, and I remind you this when you become a professional. You don't have to be officer friendly. You know what I'm talking about. But you do have to be professional. You have to be calm. You have to be direct. You're not trying to trick anybody or confuse them. And then, of all things, be patient. You can't wait. There's this, you've probably seen this on Facebook a lot, and they tell you to look at this video, and then at the end they say, wait for it. And the reason why they say wait for it is because the fact that when you look at that video, you'll presume something is happening, but then it admonishes you, let it play through. And at the end, sometimes at the very end, then you'll see what the real deal, and then you'll put what happened in the beginning in proper context. And though what you might have assumed based upon your initial viewing of this video, then you will have waited long enough to get the full picture, and then your whole direction in terms of even your questioning or your investigation would be different. So that comes from patience. Use open-ended questions. Now, open-ended questions, we use them in court only. We can use them with professionals, or if we have individuals who are specialists to come in to testify, like medical examiners, doctors, or people like that, to qualify as experts or expert witnesses, as we use the term. But we also use it in cross-examination. And the purpose for open-ended questions is to be able to let that person talk. Let that person talk. Not lead them, but open-ended questions. You want them to open up. But if you answer closed-end questions, when we cross-examine a person, we don't want them to talk. We want them just to answer our questions, specific and right to the point. We also want usually yes or no answers, those kinds of situations. But open-ended questions, on the other hand, you ask a question, did you see the car? Yes. And what color was the car? And they'll say red. Did you see anyone driving the car? Yes, you've asked now a closed end. Okay, could you tell me what you saw and the person driving the car, what took place? Then that's open-ended. They're going to give you a scenario with their answer. So it says these are questions that don't pose a yes or no response, but must be clear and concise. Avoid complicated directions. And then we talked about this a few weeks ago, maintain eye contact. Eye contact is critical. We talked about that in week 2. And so you want to make sure that you maintain eye contact because that's a key means of establishing a connection for communication. So, so before we go to this, I'm going to go right into just a little bit about hostage negotiations, which you're doing an assignment on hostage. So how do you communicate to a hostage? Obviously, this is one of the most stressful situations. You know, one of the toughest calls, one of the worst calls that most police officers receive is what? Do you have any ideas about what the worst kind of call is that they can receive? Worst kind of call? Well, yeah, but you don't receive that all the time. What's on a regular basis, what could be the worst call that you could ever get as a police officer? Or you may have heard a police officer say, or a law enforcement person. Okay, well, yeah, because we're in hospital, but get more specific. But you don't know that, but the call is a mentally ill person. That's when you observe. No, there's a call that you receive. There we go. There we go. Now we're talking domestics. That is the worst. When I was a police officer in academy, they taught us in training, the worst call that you will receive is a domestic disturbance and domestic violence. Now, here's the reason why. I can tell you from experience that you get a call, the person who calls you, the person has beat them up or attacking them or hurting them, and you get the call and you go there, and you get there, and you go in and you see the place is in disarray. Some individual you see has apparently been beaten up or injured, and so the person that apparently caused it, you go and approach them. If you handle them in a way that is displeasing to the person that's injured or who called you, they will turn on you. A common phrase is, and this is from a female, that's my man. Don't you hurt him. That's the father of my kids. Well, ma'am, you called us. Look at you. You're bloody and everything. Your eyes are bruised and everything. You know, and you know, don't be handling so tough, and vice versa. I have actually seen, and they warned us this, that the person who called you will attack you when you're trying to exercise some form of control or force against an individual. You know, do you think that does that make sense to either of you? Yeah, it does, and that's because you got emotions involved on both sides. You got emotions from that individual, and what happens is that individual begins to bounce back on, oh, wait a minute, you know, don't be so tough with them. Well, the bottom line is that you're just trying to protect that individual that called you trying to remove that individual from there. I've seen situations where the handcuffs were put on, and you start to click them, and they said, those are too tight. The person, I'm not talking about the person who you put them on. The person who called you will say that. And they'll say, that's not right. You're going to hurt him, or hurt her, the individual. Anyway, the bottom line is that, so yeah, and I've actually seen situations where the person who called actually have gone so far as to get a weapon to attack officers. So it's domestic. Domestic is called. But you were on the idea you had hostage and those kind of things, because we are talking about hostages. But I was trying to let you know that in domestic cases, there are oftentimes hostage situations. For example, there are times when a person will hold their spouse and children hostage with weapons, and you need to protect the individuals involved there, and you need to diffuse the situation, de-escalate the situation. So you have to be prepared to respond to that kind of thing. You can't just be blazing bullets at the person, because you don't know how far the individuals are. There may be kids there. There may be a spouse there or something. That person then may be, like I said earlier, maybe high on something. They're operating out of their norm. But anyway, the bottom line is that it's still a hostage situation where the persons are held against their will. So anyway, so now the question comes back to, how do you communicate to a hostage? Well, it says here, dealing with a hostage negotiation is probably one of the most stressful events you'll ever face during your career. And the reason why I mentioned domestic is because they go in hand with this. It says having good communication skills to be able to do what we call talk down a person. Talk that person from doing something that's not, they don't really want to do. They don't really have, and then sometimes people they just are frustrated. They're at the end of their rope. There are people who have just lost their jobs. There are people who have had all kinds of things. Listen to me. I knew of an instance of a person who was a student in school, and because they were failing in school, they failed a course, they ended up taking their family members hostage. Now, that made like, wow, is it really real? It's very real, and it can't happen. And so you have to use all of your skills and abilities to be able to de-escalate that whole situation. Now, in terms of dealing with hostage negotiations, one of the first things is they said, don't get fretful. And worry and how you're going to approach the situation. As this little blurb here tells us, you're going to find out the same thing I did. When I was in the academy, we got training and we had mock situations that we went through and helped us to be able to handle those when we ran into them in our street time, when we actually were beginning to work out on the streets. So it says here you'll receive continued training on this type of situation in your departments, whether it's law enforcement or correction. But the basics that you're learning, common sense now, beginning to think about that, getting yourself in the state of mind. How do you operate under pressure? How do you respond under pressure? How do you, and you recognize there's a danger to you, there's a danger to the person who's actually holding the hostage, and there's obviously danger to the the people that are held hostage as well. So it's on you. It's on you. It's almost like the leapers, people who don't really want to jump. They want some attention, and then you could say the wrong thing, and then you'll lose them, that kind of thing. So you're going to have to operate in a professional fashion. And one of the things that you're going to be discovering from your research, in addition to some of the things that we're talking about right now, is how do you respond to a hostage situation? It says, first, your future employer will have policies and procedures. So you're going to, as I try to explain to officers, you're not the Lone Ranger. You're not the answer to the whole thing. It's teamwork. We established that early on in terms of working as a team. You're going to be involved with working with other individuals. So you're going to have to learn to follow the policies. Very few of the policies encourage individual action, except in situations that's unavoidable. But you want to become familiar with those policies for a number of reasons. Those policies have been established because they know that they've been proven to work. And the other thing is you protect yourself from discipline from your agency that you work for if you follow company policies and procedures. And so the best practice is to follow them, but you'll have to study them and know them. Many departments will have what I just said a minute ago, role-playing events where you will receive hands-on training. That's what I'm talking about. And also many departments will establish hostage teams. Now, here's the deal. Before those teams arrive, you're going to have to try to maintain the status quo as much as possible. But you're going to try to deal with the situation so that it doesn't become moot or has already been completed by the time that the specialized teams arrive. So, and then they will pick up. So what your role is to try to stabilize the situation, try to bring some de-escalation, and then turn it over to the specialists. And that's what they do. The FBI is awesome with that. Some departments have sections in their departments that are hostage negotiators, and that's what they do. It says, briefly, when dealing with a hostage taker, remember calmness, I told you. Focus on the situation at hand. Try to maintain as much contact with that individual as possible. But some of the things I warn you are right here. It says, find out what they need and what they want. Find out what's causing them to do this. You have to do that in a non-hostile way to get this information. Express an interest in the individual, and then get the hostage to feeling and understanding that you're looking to try to help their demands. But the last part says, but do not give false promises. One of the worst things that you can do is make false promises. And if you make those false promises, that could make it so that the hostage taker will do something that you wouldn't want to happen. And guess who will be feeling pretty bad? You as the officer who were there. And you might have to have some counseling yourself after that. I've seen that happen with law enforcement officers. They had to have some psychological help after that because they remember. They remember that. I have a friend who is now retired, but he was a train engineer for the Metro train. And so he had an instance where a person was a jumper, and a jumper is someone who jumps in front of the train. Well, he was, of course, the train was driving. He was driving the train on the metal tracks, and the person wanted to commit suicide. And what they did was they didn't fall; they jumped. Well, he had to. He was taken off of the job with pay, obviously. He had to undergo so much, and it took him years and years and years of dealing with that. He said he'd have nightmares, and then once he went back to work, he was totally different. He would, if a person looked like they were at the edge and they were like looking or something, he would, just flash back into that. So that kind of affected him on a long-term and even permanent basis. He's long retired, but we talk about that even now, he and I. I think that incident happened about maybe 15, 20 years ago, but still remembers. So what I'm trying to get across to you is the same kind of thing that if you, for example, are trying to defuse a person and they have a weapon and they maybe even point it at you, they'll take the weapon instead and point it themselves, and then you'll try to talk them out of it. But if they happen to do it in front of you, you'll be in the same scenario as my friend there. So, anyway, that's another important thing. So I encourage you, as you do your research, to look at the FBI website and search the bulletin for articles on crisis negotiation, skills, role playing, and other topics relevant to dealing with hostage situations. There's quite a bit there. And it also has articles on other topics that for this course that you will find. But anyway, it's very, 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 very important. It's something that you will face in your career. Any questions about hostage negotiations or anything at this point from Bob or Vlad, either of you? Okay, all right. So now let's conclude and shift into, I'm going to take a few minutes and I'm going to let you, this is about a half an hour, this is, 26-minute video. So it's going to take us a little bit over our time, but this is going to be the last thing. And I encourage you to pay attention to this video. And there are little things that you'll pick up. When this course first started and I started teaching it, I, along with one of the course developers, course designers, I said to her, when we got to this module, I said, we need to help this out. And so we have a series, a library, and I found a neat one on Spanish law enforcement commands, and we embedded it in the course some quarters ago. And many of my students have come back and says, oh, wow, this is pretty cool. So anyway, let's go through this.
Now, ahora. Now, ahora. Do you need help? ¿Necesita ayuda? Do you need help? ¿Necesita ayuda? Are you sick? ¿Está enfermo? Are you sick? ¿Está enfermo? Ayuda. Herido. ¿Está herido? Hospital. Ambulancia. La ambulancia viene. ¿Qué pasó? Ahora. ¿Necesita ayuda? ¿Está enfermo? Following words are words of greeting and reassurance. tardes. Good afternoon. Buenas tardes. Good evening. Buenas noches. Good evening. Buenas noches. You. Usted. You. Usted. Yes. Sí. Yes. Sí. No. 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 Car. Carro. Car. Carro. Thank you. Gracias. Thank you. Gracias. Don't worry. No se preocupe. Don't worry. No se preocupe. Calm down. Cálmese. Calm down. Cálmese. Get out of the car. Salga del carro. Get out of the car. Salga del carro. Get into the car. Entre al carro. Get into the car. Entre al carro. Buenos días. Buenas tardes. Buenas noches. Usted. Sí. No. Carro. Gracias. No se preocupe. Cálmese. Salga del carro. Entre al carro.
Gathering information is essential. This lesson will help you gather the basics. What is your name?
¿Cómo se llama?
What is your name?
¿Cómo se llama?
Do you speak English?
¿Habla inglés?
Do you speak English?
¿Habla inglés?
Write your name.
Escriba su nombre.
Write your name.
Escriba su nombre.
Where do you live?
¿Dónde vive?
Where do you live?
¿Dónde vive?
Write your address.
Escriba su dirección.
Write your address.
Escriba su dirección.
Sit down.
Siéntese.
Sit down.
Siéntese.
Come here.
Venga aquí.
Come here.
Venga aquí.
Turn around.
Voltéese.
Turn around.
Voltéese.
Do you want to make a phone call?
¿Quiere llamar por teléfono?
Do you want to make a telephone call?
¿Quiere llamar por teléfono? ¿Cómo se llama? ¿Habla inglés? Escriba su nombre. ¿Dónde vive? Escriba su dirección. Siéntese. Venga aquí. Voltéese. ¿Quiere llamar por teléfono?
The traffic stop. Some basic commands and phrases here. Your driver's license, please.
Su licencia, por favor.
Your driver's license, please.
Su licencia, por favor.
Your car registration, please.
Su matrícula del carro, por favor.
Your car registration, please.
Su matrícula del carro, por favor.
Wait here.
Espere aquí.
Wait here.
Espere aquí.
The insurance card for your car.
La tarjeta de seguro para su carro.
The insurance card for your car.
La tarjeta de seguro para su carro.
The insurance card for the hospital.
La tarjeta de seguro para el hospital.
The insurance card for the hospital.
La tarjeta de seguro para el hospital.
This is a ticket.
Esto es una multa.
This is a ticket.
Esto es una multa. Apague el motor. Su licencia, por favor. Su matrícula del carro, por favor. Espere aquí. La tarjeta de seguro para su carro. La tarjeta de seguro para el hospital. Esto es una multa.
Basic commands here in Lesson 7 if you feel an arrest is probable. Don't move.
No se mueva.
Don't move.
No se mueva.
On the ground, face down.
En el suelo, boca abajo.
On the ground, face down.
En el suelo, boca abajo.
Spread your feet.
Abra sus pies.
Spread your feet.
Abra sus pies.
You are under arrest.
Está arrestado.
You are under arrest.
Está arrestado.
You are not under arrest.
No está arrestado.
You are not under arrest.
No está arrestado.
Let me see your hands.
Déjeme ver sus manos.
Let me see your hands.
Déjeme ver sus manos. No se mueva. En el suelo, boca abajo. Abra sus pies. Está arrestado. No está arrestado. Déjeme ver sus manos.
Lesson 8, some basics and important questions. Have you had any alcohol to drink today?
¿Ha bebido alcohol hoy?
Have you had any alcohol to drink today?
¿Ha bebido alcohol hoy?
Have you had any alcohol to drink tonight?
¿Ha bebido alcohol esta noche?
Have you had any alcohol to drink tonight?
¿Ha bebido alcohol esta noche?
Have you had any drugs today?
¿Ha usado drogas hoy?
Have you had any drugs today?
¿Ha usado drogas hoy?
Do you have a weapon?
¿Tiene un arma?
Do you have a weapon?
¿Tiene un arma?
Put the weapon on the ground.
Ponga el arma en el suelo.
Put the weapon on the ground.
Ponga el arma en el suelo.
Will you allow me to search your vehicle?
¿Me deja buscar en su carro?
Will you allow me to search your vehicle?
¿Me deja buscar en su carro? ¿Ha bebido alcohol hoy? ¿Ha bebido alcohol esta noche? ¿Ha usado drogas hoy? ¿Tiene un arma? Ponga el arma en el suelo. ¿Me deja buscar en su carro?
Lesson 9. More questions related to the stop. Where are you going?
¿A dónde va?
Where are you going?
¿A dónde va?
Where are you coming from?
¿De dónde viene?
Where are you coming from?
¿De dónde viene?
Do you have any weapons or needles?
¿Tiene algún arma o agujas?
Do you have any weapons or needles?
¿Tiene algún arma o agujas?
Are there any weapons or drugs in your vehicle?
¿Hay armas o agujas en su carro?
Are there any weapons or drugs in your vehicle?
¿Hay armas o agujas en su carro?
I need to handcuff you for your protection and mine.
Tengo que ponerle las esposas para su protección y la mía.
I need to handcuff you for your protection and mine.
Tengo que ponerle las esposas para su protección y la mía. ¿A dónde va? ¿De dónde viene? ¿Tiene algún arma o agujas? ¿Hay armas o agujas en su carro? Tengo que ponerle las esposas para su protección y la mía.
Number 10, keywords and phrases to remember. Stop.
Alto,
Stop.
alto.
Get out of the car.
Salga del carro.
Get out of the car.
Salga del carro.
Do you speak English?
¿Habla inglés?
Do you speak English?
¿Habla inglés?
What is your name?
¿Cómo se llama?
What is your name?
¿Cómo se llama?
Are you hurt?
¿Está herido?
Are you hurt?
¿Está herido?
Do you need help?
¿Necesita ayuda?
Do you need help?
¿Necesita ayuda?
Calm down.
Cálmese,
Calm down.
cálmese.
Don't worry.
No se preocupe,
Don't worry.
no se preocupe.
Let me see your hands.
Déjeme ver sus manos.
Let me see your hands.
Déjeme ver sus manos.
Wait here.
Espere aquí.
Wait here.
Espere aquí.
You are under arrest.
Está arrestado.
You are under arrest.
Está arrestado.
You are not under arrest.
No está arrestado.
You are not under arrest.
No está arrestado. Alto. Salga del carro. ¿Habla inglés? ¿Cómo se llama? ¿Está herido? ¿Necesita ayuda? Cálmese. No se preocupe. Déjeme ver sus manos. Espere aquí. Está arrestado. No está arrestado.
Practice does make perfect, and that's what learning a new language is all about, practicing and repetition. Good luck. Do you have any thoughts on learning some simple Spanish commands? Please share them with us. Our email address is lightofduty@aol.com. Our World Wide Web address, lightofduty.com. I'm Ron Barber, and I'm Don Marsh.
Okay, those are, that is one of the, that's one of the things that, I tell students all the time. I say it's very important that you learn that. A few others are initiales. It means initials. La fecha. It is the date. Firma aquí means sign your name here. Those are some commands, just a few others to add on to it. But you discover from looking at that the things that you learn from just seeing, these are basic things that you'll need to use in law enforcement and are very valuable. And that's just a start. But here's the deal, is that once you learn how to put those commands in and you learn how to save them, and I apologize for muting it earlier. I didn't realize that when I muted my side that it muted what you were doing. So, but you were able to see it at the same time. But then thanks for letting me know, Bob, about that. But at any rate, it's very important and that you learn how to speak the language, and like I said, I explained why Spanish. So with that, I'm done. Any questions from Bob or Vlad, either of you? Any questions? Okay. I hope this has been a valuable bit of time that you've taken in tonight to help you with your communication skills. And I think that you'll find, as one student came back and told me, he said, Professor Wright, I'm really glad that you ran that video, because sometimes the student systems don't work with getting them, where you could hear them. And so you're able to hear them, except when I hit that mute button. But the bottom line is that it helps you a whole lot. And that little information that I shared with you on hostage, it puts you a little bit ahead of people who will have to go back and listen to the archive as they prepare that written assignment for hostage, and begins to give you some ideas and directions of where you can find information on that. So I'm going to say good night. Thank you guys for coming out tonight. I've had a very long day. We had a seminar today. Our campus in the campuses in Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Illinois. I think it was Minnesota. Anyway, they were not open earlier because we were all in this seminar in Illinois, and that we had to get up. I had to get up at 5 this morning, and got back about 4:30, and then I had a lecture at 6:30, and then this one. So I'm going to say good night, Bob, and good night, Vlad. Thank you. Thank you.